Well, welcome to Christian Answers. This is Pastor Jeff Short. Glad to have you along for the discussion today. Today we're going to be taking on one of the leading atheists in the 20th century, Carl Sagan, and we're going to be looking at one of the books that he wrote. Actually, his wife, Andrew Wren, wrote after his death, compiled up of his lectures from the past that he gave at universities all over the country and all over the world. And he is talking about the subject of religion. He's an atheist. He's a skeptic. He disavows all religions. He thinks that the only way to know anything is through the scientific method. And so he wants to debunk Christianity. That was his mission in his broadcasts, for example, on the famous PBS program Cosmos. His mission was to debunk Christianity. His mission in his books was to basically debunk Christianity and say that you can't know anything unless you know it through the scientific method. Well, today, I'm going to take the very first chapter in his book. It's The Varieties of Scientific Experience by Carl Sagan. And in this book, he has a number of different arguments that he makes in an attempt to debunk Christianity. And we're going to debunk the debunker today. We're going to be skeptical of the skeptic. And so we're going to look at his chapter called The Nature and Wonder, a Reconnaissance of Heaven. And so what he does in the first chapter is he goes through the cosmos, and he basically shows that it's a very, very big place. And he says, for example, the universe is mainly made of nothing, that something it is an exception, nothing is the rule, that darkness is a commonplace, it is light that is the rarity. So he wants to show that there's a big, big universe out there. And of course, Christians believe that the universe is big. And then he also wants to look at our solar system, the 9 planets, if you count Pluto, 9 planets, and the sun. And he says, we live in the third piece of debris from the sun. So he's attempting, what he's trying to do here is to argue that the planet Earth is no special place. Contrary to what Christian theology teaches, the planet Earth is no special place. It's just like an ordinary planet around an ordinary sun, and it's just here in our ordinary solar system. And he makes observations and says that according to Astronomy Today, that there are all kinds of planets revolving around all kinds of suns, and there are billions and billions of suns and billions of solar systems, and we are just one solar system in billions. He likes to use that word billions and billions, and we are just one planet among billions. And so he also argues that based on the assumption of the theory of evolution, that there are probably many planets, billions possibly, but millions or thousands that have life on them and probably have intelligent life. So he's going to go whole hog, full in to the theory of cosmic evolution, not just evolution on the planet Earth, but cosmic evolution. And so he moves on and he says, so the world that we live in is a tiny and insignificant part of the vast collection of the world. So this is building up to one of his conclusions, and that is that the vastness of space, the humongous size of the cosmos, he wants to say that Christian theology really hasn't ever dealt with that adequately and haven't given an explanation or an apologetic for the vastness of space. Well, I'll come back to that later, but yes, Christian theology has dealt with that. Actually, the Bible has dealt with that in a number of passages that he clearly doesn't know about, or he's not familiar with, or he hasn't even reflected on what the Bible talks about, the vastness of space. He says, grave problems are posed for any planets that are around exploding stars. So now we start to get into another odd concern of Carl Sagan. He talks about supernova and the phenomenon of stars exploding. And when they go supernova or when they explode, they send particles of energy flying out into space, and these are deadly, and they destroy all life in their path. And so he's wanting to build up to a concern and an anxiety of his, and that is that any life on any planet that existed around the star that exploded, the supernova, would surely have been destroyed in this explosion, which means big trouble for inhabitants of any planets that might have been there. So he's bringing up a concern about an assumption that he holds based on the theory of evolution, Darwin's theory of evolution. He's bringing up a concern based on an assumption on Darwinian evolution on a cosmic scale. He's saying that because life evolved on Earth, that's the assumption of evolution, it probably evolved in other places in the universe, and that because we know that there are billions and billions of stars out there, we can see them through the telescopes. We also have now discovered that there are exoplanets. There are planets revolving around these stars based on calculations of light wavering when the star passes in front, or the planet passes in front of the star, distant star. So we know that there are planets, just like our solar system has planets. And so he's saying that based on that, there must be billions and billions of solar systems. And based on the assumption of evolution, there are probably some planets someplace that have life on them, and then some of them have even intelligent life. And he's saying that because there are all these explosions out in space, supernova, stars exploding, which means that the trouble for the inhabitants of any planet that might have been next to one of these stars. He says, on the other hand, since this is 5 or 6 or 7 billion years in the future, he's saying that our planet, the Earth, will at some point be engulfed by the size of our sun, and that in 5-6 billion years, that the planet Earth will have burned up because it's going to be engulfed by the sun. And he says that, but it is something to bear in mind. It has theological implications. So he's going to say that because all these explosions are occurring out in outer space, supernova, stars exploding, there have to be civilizations on planets that have perished because of these huge explosions out in space. And he's just worried, he's concerned about the theological implications of these supernova stars exploding and destroying entire planets of civilized beings on them. And what does that say about theology, and what are the implications of that? Well, first of all, I would say, in response to all of this worry about supernovas destroying entire civilizations way out there in the cosmos, I would say, first of all, there is no shred of evidence. Let me repeat, there is no shred of evidence at the current time that there is any life out there in the cosmos, and certainly no intelligent life out there in the cosmos. That's only an assumption based on a speculation that cosmic evolution is happening all over the cosmos. That's based on an assumption. So this worry about entire planets of beings on them being wiped out, and how is that compatible with a loving God that cares about his creatures, that is based on speculation and unsubstantiated theories and just plain silliness. First of all, you got to get the cart before the horse. We don't know that there is life outside of the planet Earth. So if we don't know that there's life outside of the planet Earth, we certainly shouldn't be worrying about intelligent life outside of the planet Earth being wiped out by supernova exploding stars. So this is a silly concern of his and a silly worry of his. And it's not really a worry of his. He's not really worried about it. What he's wanting to do is he wanting to debunk Christianity and the whole idea of a personal God. And he's going to say, well, see, God wouldn't be a loving God if he allowed all these civilizations out there who no doubt have been wiped out because of the exploding stars. And even our own planet in 5, 6, 7 billion years will be wiped out. So where is your loving, concerning God about that? I would say in response to the worry about the world, the planet Earth being wiped out in 5, 6, 7 billion years, I would say to him, he just needs to simply read the Bible. Because the Bible, I don't believe, has anything going on the planet Earth in 5, 6, 7 billion years from now. Billion years from now. I think all of the biblical history from start, middle, and ending has been completed by 5, 6 billion years from now. After all, the biblical history, the biblical philosophy of history, the view of history is that there was a beginning, and the Bible describes that. Genesis 1, in the beginning, God created. And then everything that follows in the Bible is the middle. And then it also describes in the book of Revelation in the New Testament the end. So you got the beginning, middle, and end, and all of that happens, I would presume, according to the Bible, everything in the Bible backs me up on this, I would presume and assume that everything that God intends for the human race has been fulfilled before the planet Earth, according to Carl Sagan, would have been engulfed in the sun 5 or 6 or 7 billion years from now. Yeah, everything that God intends to do in the physical material planet Earth with humans has been completed. So he doesn't have to worry about that. That's a false worry. Nobody's worrying about that. No Christians are worrying about that. He's not even worrying about that. He's only bringing it up so that he can maybe debunk Christianity and debunk belief in a personal God. So that's his only concern. He's not really worried about people on the planet Earth 5, 6, 7 billion years from now. Come on. It's silly, goofy. He says, as far as we can tell, the average star is in no major way different from the sun, or put another way, the sun is a reasonably typical star. So again, he's trying to downplay any significant special status for the planet Earth or for the solar system we inhabit. And he's also going to do that with human life. He's going to say we're just a product of evolution. We're no different than any other creature other than we have evolved in a higher way. And he also says, and this vast number of worlds, the enormous scale of the universe, in my view, has been taken into account, has not been taken into an account, even superficially, in virtually no religion, and especially in Western religion. So he's saying the universe that I described, the vastness, billions and billions of stars and the vast sizes and all of the terrible explosions taking place, and the fact that our planet's going to burn up, that has not been grappled with by the theologians of Christianity, and no religion, to his knowledge, he says, doesn't take into consideration the vastness of the universe, the size of the universe. Well, I would just ask him, does he not read the Old Testament of the Bible, and does he not read the book of Psalms, where it talks about the heavens declare the glory of God? And it talks about that when you look up in the sky, you can grasp the importance of God and his existence. In fact, let me go to the book of Romans and show you that the vastness of the heavens and the universe and the sky and the natural world has been taken into consideration. And I'll just read to you a little bit from the book of Romans to that effect. It says in Romans 1:18, it talks about the wrath of God has been revealed from heaven against all godlessness and wickedness of men who suppress the truth by their wickedness. And it talks about since what may be known about God has been plain to them, because God has made it plain to them. For since the beginning of the world, God's invisible qualities, his eternal power and divine nature, have been clearly seen by and understood by what has been made. So men are without excuse. So, contrary to what Carl Sagan is saying, when men look up in the vast distances of space, there's a sense of wonder and awe, and that leads them to thoughts about God. And this is exactly what has happened to some of the greatest thinkers that have ever existed, some of the greatest philosophers, for example. Does Carl Sagan not know about Blaise Pascal, who is a famous French philosopher of the Enlightenment? And he wrote a number of different reflections and meditations. They've been put together in a book called the Pensées. And he spoke a lot about the vastness of space and how the wonder and awe of the stars and the planets and the shooting stars, comets, meteorites, and all of the different things that we observe in the sky, especially the night sky, and how those vast distances and even seemingly infinity out there draw us into awe and wonder, not only of God's creation, but of the Creator himself. And so Carl Sagan doesn't mention Blaise Pascal, but he's one of the great thinkers and who has already thought a lot about this and the implications of it in theology and religion. So it is not true that there have not been thoughts about this. But he comes back again in the first chapter. He comes back and he says, there's a great deal of suffering and death in the cosmos if there has been a great deal of life. And as I will speculate later, life and perhaps even intelligent life is a cosmic commonplace, then it must follow that there is a massive destruction, obliteration of whole planets that seemingly occurs frequently throughout the universe. And so he's worried about where is God in all of that suffering and death and destruction of these hypothetical civilizations out there. And again, he's getting the cart before the horse. Don't start worrying about civilizations that have perished out in the cosmos until till there's evidence there actually is such a civilization out there, far out there in the cosmos. He then quotes Tennyson, the poet, and he says, poet says, I found him, that is God, in the shining of the stars. Okay, that's what Paul talks about in Romans. I marked him in the flowering of his fields, and that's described also in the Bible, in the book of Psalms. So pretty ordinary. But then Tennyson goes on and says, in his ways with men I find him not. Why is all around us here as if some lower God had made the world, but had not forced to shape it as he would. So Carl Sagan jumps on that and says, see, Tennyson sees God in the heavenly order and the stars and the awe. But then when it comes to humanity, he asks, well, I don't see God here in the human population. It acts as if it's just chaotic, and it looks like no God has shaped the organized humanity at all. And Carl Sagan says, that makes a lot of sense for me. It doesn't make sense that God would be a good, loving God if you see all of the pain and suffering of humanity. But I would simply point Carl Sagan to the Bible again and say, do you not understand the Christian and Jewish answer to that dilemma? And the Jewish and Christian answer to that is found in the Bible again, that you evidently have not read or have become familiar enough to incorporate this in your thinking. The fall into sin of Adam and Eve, and therefore the plunge of the whole human race into sin and suffering because of that fall. The fall is the way the Bible explains why things are not the way they should be on the planet Earth. And you would know that, Carl Sagan, if you read the Bible and you took it seriously. Because if you don't take the Bible seriously, then you don't take the explanations it gives why things are messed up. And so the answer to the problem, well, why don't we see God putting things right and in order on earth? Well, the Bible answer is that because of the fall of man, history, according to the Bible, right now is post-fall. So we're in a fallen state. God is allowing that fallen state to continue for a while until, and now the New Testament comes into play, the second coming of Jesus the Messiah, who will come and begin the process of setting things right and eventually creating the perfect world order. But not until then. It's the plan of God to not intervene and set things right perfectly until the end time. So again, you have to go back and take the Bible seriously to understand the solution to the problems he's raising. But if you don't believe the Bible, if you think it's just myths and fairy tales, then you don't take it seriously, but then you don't have the answer for the questions you're raising. And you're acting like, well, Christianity doesn't have an answer to that. Yes, we do, but you have to take the Bible seriously. You have to take the fall and sin seriously. And then you understand why it looks like the human race is chaotic and there's suffering and all of that. Yes, that's the result of the fall. That's what's explained in the Bible. So his attempt to debunk Christianity fails because he fails to take Christian biblical teaching seriously. And by not doing that, then he finds gaps, he finds flaws in his understanding of religion and what he sees in nature. But if you take the Bible seriously, it makes sense. It makes a lot more sense, Christianity makes a lot more sense than to say that everything just happened for some unknown reason, and that because there's no known reason or purpose for any of this, because of this cosmic accident that occurred, according to Carl Sagan, no one has a clue as to what's to become of human race or any individual. There's no hope for the future. There's no hope for humanity. His view leads to just darkness and pessimism and nihilism. And what's the point of anything? It leaves all of the important questions unanswered. And so, but he's not satisfied with that nihilistic view. He has to try to debunk Christianity and try to confuse the theology of Christianity to try to make it go down in flames so that everyone can be nihilistic and depressed and dark and without hope like he is. He then talks about, in the final part of the chapter, he says, it is a God of a small world. He says, if we're the only ones that have life and intelligent life, and we're the only ones that matter in the whole galaxy, it is a God of one small world. And I believe a problem that theologians have not adequately addressed. Well, that's a whole other topic as far as what are the implications of finding life on some other planet, or finding especially intelligent life on some other planet. I'm not convinced that finding an intelligent civilization on some other planet would necessarily alter our theology very much. It would definitely give us a different perspective on certain aspects of our theology, but there is no question that the Bible is primarily or specifically centered on the human race, and we are the subjects that the Bible deals with in relationship to God. But if we did find human or intelligent beings on other planets, it wouldn't, as from my point of view, and we can talk about this some other time, but it wouldn't destroy Christian theology. It would cause us to have to adjust certain aspects of Christian theology. Specifically, it would have to force us to think about the atonement in a different way than we normally think about it. We think about the atonement where Jesus died once for all for the sins of the world, and that was a one-time event that occurred on the planet Earth. Now, if there are other worlds and there are other civilizations, they would have either had to have fallen into sin like Adam and Eve, or they didn't fall into sin like Adam and Eve, and they live on a perfect planet, which is a possibility. And they wouldn't need a savior. Perhaps if there are civilizations out there, they haven't fallen, but you would think that if there were many civilizations out there, some would have fallen, some would not have fallen. Or they would have all fallen like us. It's really hard to imagine that all of the civilizations, if any out there, would have been perfect except us. So we're having to rethink about, okay, what does the atonement mean? If it means that he died once for all for sinners, it must mean that he's talking about this planet only. And so we shouldn't try to universalize the biblical theology on that. So the bottom line is this book, and I'll be going through some other chapters in it, but the attempt by Carl Sagan to debunk Christianity and religion based on the vast size of the universe, it fails. It doesn't make sense. That is not what the objection would be if you're trying to debunk Christianity. Well, we'll talk to you back next week. See you then. God bless.